Picture this. It's the summer of 1853. You're at Moon's Lake House, an ultra-fancy resort in Saratoga Springs, New York. The air smells like expensive cigars. The women are wearing corsets that make breathing optional, and the men are flaunting top hats so high they look like structural pillars.
Sitting in the dining room is one of the wealthiest shipping tycoons in American history, a guy who is used to snapping his fingers and getting exactly what he wants. He orders the house specialty, French fried potatoes.
The plate arrives. The tycoon picks up a fork, takes a bite, and instantly pulls a face like he just chewed on a wet sponge. He calls the waiter over. "These," he says, waving a hand in pure disgust, "are an insult. They are way too thick. They're soggy. They lack class. Take them back."
Now, let's go into the kitchen. Standing over a roaring stove is George Crum. George is half African-American and half Huron, and he possesses zero tolerance for wealthy elites complaining about his food. He's a culinary genius, but more importantly, he is an absolute master of holding a grudge.
Crum rolls his eyes, grabs a new batch of potatoes, chops them up a bit thinner, fries them, and sends them back out.
The tycoon tries them again. Still too thick, still too soggy. He sends them back a second time.
Inside the kitchen, the atmosphere shifts. The ambient temperature seems to drop below freezing. George Crum is no longer just cooking dinner. He is planning a declaration of war. He looks at the potato in his hand and thinks, "Oh, you want thin? I'll give you thin."
He grabs his sharpest knife. He slices the potato so incredibly thin, you could literally read a newspaper through the slices. They aren't even chunks anymore. They're translucent shavings of starch.
He drops them into a vat of boiling oil, frying them until they are completely dried out, brittle, and hard as a rock.
But he doesn't stop there. To ensure maximum discomfort for the picky tycoon, Crum grabs a handful of salt and aggressively dumps it over the crispy shavings. His goal is simple: make something completely inedible, ruin the guy's night, and hopefully make him break a tooth. It is a masterpiece of pure, unadulterated kitchen spite.
The waiter brings the plate out, sweating bullets. The kitchen staff peeks through the door, waiting for the explosion. The tycoon looks at the bizarre, curly, brittle discs. He picks one up with his fingers. It snaps. He puts it in his mouth.
Crunch. The kitchen holds its breath. The tycoon's eyes go wide. He reaches out, grabs another one, and crams it into his face. Crunch. Then another. Within 2 minutes, the richest man in the room has completely demolished the entire plate and is licking the salt off his fingers. He looks up and demands more.
Instead of ruining a customer's night, George Crum had accidentally invented the potato chip, a snack that would go on to conquer the global economy, yielding billions of dollars annually from human beings who simply cannot stop crunching. But here is the real question. Why did a prank designed to be awful turn out to be the most addictive food on the planet? Why are our brains completely powerless against a thin slice of fried starch?
To understand that, we have to look past the kitchen of Moon's Lake House and journey deep into the evolutionary code of the human animal. Because as it turns out, George Crum didn't just invent a snack, he accidentally hacked our biology.
Let's hit the brakes for a second and deal with the massive elephant in the historical dining room. If you search for this story online, popular legend will tell you that the annoying tycoon who kept sending the potatoes back was none other than Commodore Cornelius Vanderbilt, the legendary railroad billionaire. It makes for a fantastic story, the ultimate working-class chef sticking it to the ultimate billionaire capitalist.
But if we pull back the curtain of history and look at the actual documentation, things get a bit messy.
The earliest written accounts of the invention don't mention Vanderbilt at all. In fact, Vanderbilt was a regular at Saratoga Springs, but he loved luxury. The idea that he was a finicky, rude customer who threw tantrums over potato thickness might just be a myth cooked up by 20th century journalists to make the story punchier. Furthermore, some historical records suggest George Crum's sister, Catherine Wicks, might have actually dropped a thin slice of potato into the frying oil by total accident while making something else, and George just ran with it.
But whether it was a sister's mistake or a chef's malicious compliance, one thing is entirely true. George Crum recognized the magic of what happened. He put Saratoga chips on the menu, and elite travelers from all over the country started flocking to the lake house just to get a taste of the crispy novelty.
Think about the food landscape of the 1850s. If you bought food back then, most of it was soft, stewed, boiled, or baked. Bread was dense, meat was boiled into submission, and vegetables were cooked until they were mush.
Suddenly, humans were handed something that didn't just taste good. It made a loud, violent sound inside their skulls when they bit down. It was a sensory explosion. But why do we care about the sound? Why does the human brain get a massive hit of dopamine when a food goes snap?
Let's travel back about 200,000 years. You are an early human foraging in the wild. You don't have a grocery store, expiration dates, or refrigeration. You have to rely entirely on your senses to figure out if something is going to nourish you or kill you.
You find a green, leafy plant. You bite into it. If it's soft, limp, and mushy, what does your brain tell you? It tells you it's rotting, it's full of bacteria, it's old.
But if you bite into that leaf or a piece of fruit and it makes a sharp, distinct snap, your brain celebrates. Crunch equaled absolute freshness. It meant the cell walls of the plant were full of water, crisp, and safe to eat.
Over hundreds of generations, our ancestors developed a deep, subconscious psychological association. Crunch means life, safety, and health. Fast forward back to 1853. George Crum takes a potato, which is usually boiled or thickly fried, and strips away all its moisture, leaving behind nothing but pure, unadulterated structure that shatters upon impact.
When you bite a potato chip, your ancient caveman brain hears that loud acoustic feedback and instantly shouts, "Yes, this is the freshest, safest thing we have ever found in our lives." Even though in reality, it's just grease and salt. You are literally tricking your evolutionary defense mechanisms into throwing a party. But the sound is only half the battle. George Crum accidentally stumbled upon the holy trinity of human dietary addiction, the perfect alignment of fat, salt, and carbohydrates. In the ancient wild, finding fat was incredibly rare and required hunting down dangerous animals. Finding salt was a biological necessity to keep your nervous system working, but it was incredibly scarce. Finding fast-acting carbohydrates meant hitting the jackpot with a rare bush of wild berries. Human beings evolved to crave these three things above everything else, because in a world of starvation, the individuals who ate the most fat and salt survived the winter. So when Crum pulled those chips out of the oil and covered them in crystals of sodium, he created a biological cheat code. The potato chip provides maximum caloric density with zero chewing effort. Scientists call this vanishing caloric density. When a chip melts in your mouth quickly, it tricks your brain into thinking the calories have vanished, so your stomach never sends the signal that you are full. You just keep reaching back into the bag. For decades after Crum's invention, potato chips remained a localized luxury. They were kept in large wooden barrels or glass display cases in upscale restaurants and grocery stores. If you wanted them, you bought them in a tin or a paper scoop. And if you didn't eat them fast, they went stale and gross within days. Enter Laura Scudder in the 1920s. Laura operated a chip company in California, and she noticed a massive flaw in the business model.
chips couldn't travel. They crumbled, they got exposed to air, and they turned into soggy oil rags.
So Laura had a brilliant idea. She had her workers take sheets of wax paper, iron them by hand into bags, fill them with chips, and seal the tops with a warm iron.
Suddenly, the potato chip was locked in a pristine, airtight capsule. It could be shipped across states, stacked on shelves, and kept perfectly crispy for weeks. The humble Saratoga snack was officially ready for global domination.
By the time the mid-20th century rolled around, major corporations realized that George Crum's spite food was a gold mine. They began applying industrial science to the crunch.
They didn't just fry potatoes anymore. They engineered them. They calculated the exact thickness required to maximize the acoustic frequency of the bite. They designed bags filled with nitrogen gas to prevent the chips from shattering during shipping while keeping them perfectly dry.
Every time you open a bag today and hear that loud pop of the foil, followed by the immediate messy shatter of a chip between your teeth, you aren't just eating a snack. You are participating in a multi-billion-dollar symphony of evolutionary manipulation. It's wild to think about how the smallest, most insignificant moments can permanently alter human culture. If George Crum had just had a slightly better day in 1853, or if that anonymous customer had just eaten his soggy potatoes without complaining, the supermarket snack aisle will look completely different today.
But human pettiness won the day. A chef got mad, a customer got flexed on, and the world got a food that we physically cannot stop eating.
So, the next time you find yourself at the bottom of a family-sized bag of chips at 2 a.m., covered in crumbs and wondering where it all went wrong, don't blame yourself. Don't feel guilty. Just raise a salty finger to the sky and thank George Crum, the king of kitchen malice, for the most delicious temper tantrum in human history.